Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Aravosis Report. I am John Aravosis. We are here to talk about Ukraine. Yes, cue the Russians. Um, this is my daily Ukraine update, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Yesterday, we had an election update. So today will be all about Ukraine. As always, I will talk about 20 minutes. And then we'll do the question and answer period at the end. I will fill you in how we do that. And if anybody new comes on, if the moderators can just help me out, especially on TikTok, and just sort of give the newbies the explanation of how it works. So as I said, I will be talking for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe, about the latest news from Ukraine, and then we will do question and answer. Now, the way the Q&A works on TikTok, you can go to my profile, and there's a Q&A link, at least for many of you. Submit your questions there. That's the easiest way to do it. On YouTube, you can either use the super chat questions, or not just YouTube, the rest of you guys use the comment box at the bottom, etc. I've got my laptop here for those guys and my iPad here for you guys. That's why I keep looking back and forth. So most important thing you can do to help me out with today's broadcast are gifts and follow. So please follow me on TikTok. Please follow me on YouTube, everywhere else. And the gifts help out too, because I'm doing this full time. And honestly, the money I make is the money you guys give me through gifts. So that's what helps keep me going. I really appreciate it. TikTok gifts, I will thank everybody that I can see who's providing the gifts there. So thank you for that. On YouTube, it's the super chat questions, same thing, and the super stickers. I will try to give shout outs for you guys as well. And finally, I will give priority to questions to super chats on YouTube and to subscribers on TikTok. I've got a little button at the bottom of the screen that I can pull the subscribers up and see your guys' questions. So I will do that when we get to the Q&A. All right, guys. Final thing is you can go to aravosis.com and see my store, my Discord, everything else. Let's get rolling. So I wanted to let folks know in terms of Ukraine today, I've got a fundraiser going on to raise, to buy 2 diesel generators and 2 backup batteries for Ukrainian troops at the front lines. They contacted us directly. They're known commodity. A friend of my friend's, Vlad, who I collaborate with in Ukraine, his friends know these guys. They're legit. And we are raising $3,800 to buy these generators and batteries for Ukrainian troops at the front lines to help provide for field hospital, to help provide cooking, to help provide drone power, to help charge up the drones, to help charge up their communications. If you guys can help, I'd appreciate it. We were up to $2,900 that you guys donated in the last 24 hours already today. We need a little less than $1,000 to go. If you guys can help out, I'd appreciate it. On TikTok, you can go to my profile, click the link, and it'll take you to the link there. You can see the very top link will be how to donate to my friend Vlad with PayPal. The rest of you, I will put up the banner for Vlad. That is how you donate to Vlad. All right, let me get rolling. So this was really interesting news that I vaguely had heard about today, and did some research right before the show started. And the Ukrainians blew up 4 Russian helicopters a couple days ago on October 30th, so 2 days ago. They blew up 4 Russian helicopters deep in Russia. Okay, we're talking 500 kilometers away from Ukraine. That's almost 300 miles, 310 miles actually, away from Ukraine, that the Ukrainians blew up 3 Russian helicopters. They put explosives on a 4th Russian helicopter. I'm going to show you. I grabbed just a little map and I'll show you. So on this map, it's a Google map, and Google, God knows why. If anybody works at Google, tell them to fix it. Google's horrific about drawing borders on countries. You can never see it. But if you look closely, I drew the border on Ukraine, so to speak, and you will see the little red dot at the top is where the helicopters were. They were about 100 kilometers, maybe 60 miles east of Latvia. Okay, take a look at this. The yellow is Ukraine. North of Ukraine, you've got Belarus. Then you've got the Baltic countries. It's east of Latvia and Estonia, basically, that you had the attack at that red dot. Check this out. The red dot at the top is where the attack was. The yellow circle at the bottom is Ukraine. 300 miles, 500 kilometers away. Okay, I'm going to read you more from this, from the Kyiv Post. So Ukrainian commandos blew up 3 helicopter gunships at a Russian military airfield. Oh, let me adjust my volume. Oh, my volume's good. At a Russian military airfield close to the Latvian border in one of the most spectacular behind-the-scenes raids launched by either side since the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Thank you for the November gift. Multiple sources confirmed on Tuesday. The attack was on October 30th, as I said, 500 kilometers or 310 miles north of Ukraine. 2 Kamaz-52 attack helicopters were destroyed completely. A third was badly damaged by detonator charges placed by Ukrainian operatives infiltrating in and out of sight without being detected. Russian security teams subsequently found a 4th helicopter rigged with explosives. I mean, guys, this is amazing stuff. And the thing is, this is the stuff that I think is really freaking Putin out because, look, it doesn't take a lot to kill civilians. That's all the Russians are doing now. They're trying to kill civilians. They're trying to blow up civilian infrastructure, energy, water, stuff that, mind you, is illegal. Okay. Illegal. It is a war crime what the Russians are doing. But because they can't impact Ukraine militarily, they're trying to hurt Ukrainian citizens. Whereas the Ukrainians turn around and what are they doing? Everything the Ukrainians are doing has a military goal and a military impact. Thank you, Paula, for the origami there. Just brilliant. I mean, blows my mind that they did this. So the Ukrainians blew up 2 Russian helicopters completely. Thank you, Flower Lady, as always. Blew up 2 helicopters completely, damaged a third, and almost blew up a 4th, but the Russians found it 300 miles north of Ukraine inside Russia and 500 kilometers north of Ukraine. Absolutely amazing. Another big story the last couple of days has been the grain deal. So what had happened with this, okay? Beginning of the war was end of February. The Russians refused to let Ukrainian grain shipments. Ukraine, like Russia, exports a lot of grain. A lot of their grain, actually 50% of their grain goes to, sorry, my allergies are bothering me as always when I get on with you guys. 50% of Ukrainian grain goes to lower and middle income countries, mostly in Africa and Asia. And the other 50% goes to Europe and places like that. The Russians have been lying and trying to, big surprise here, but lying and claiming, oh, all the grain goes to Europe. It doesn't go to anybody else. In fact, a lot of it goes to Egypt and a lot of other places. So the Russians stopped Ukraine for months from exporting grain because they didn't want the Ukrainians to get the money, but also the Russians wanted to hold the rest of the world hostage. I mean, they wanted to basically create famine in Africa and Middle East in order to put pressure, they thought, on the Western governments to stop supporting Ukraine. They also wanted to create a refugee crisis because that's one of the tricks they've done before. Previously, they piled a bunch of refugees across Belarus, going into Poland. I mean, this is what they do. The other reason, which I heard this weekend, and I hadn't thought about it, but I should have, Russia loves to make grain crises because Russia is still exporting its grain. And we have, a one world market, just like with oil. If oil prices go up, they go up everywhere. If grain prices go up, they go up everywhere. So what you have is Russia is, by stopping Ukraine from shipping out grain, Russia restricts supply, right? Supply demand curve. You restrict supply, the prices go up. And what happens? Russia makes even more money. So in any case, that's what was going on. The end of July, I'll read you here from a CNN, I think it's CNN, under the terms of the deal. So end of July, Russia reaches a deal with the United Nations, with Turkey, and with Ukraine to start exporting the grain again. Okay, the 4 countries signed on, 3 countries in the UN. Listen to this. Under the terms of the deal, empty ships are inspected in Istanbul, Turkey, before they depart for Ukraine to check that they're not carrying weapons. In other words, ships coming into Ukraine are checked in Turkey to make sure they're not carrying weapons for Ukraine. And when the ships leave again, they have to stop in Turkey again when they leave with grain to be inspected again. Now, this one I don't quite understand, because if the ships are leaving Ukraine, it's not like Ukraine is exporting weapons, right? Ukraine needs the weapons. They're not sending weapons out. Nonetheless, the grain shipments are inspected again, and then they go to the rest of the world. Well, the Russians decided a few days ago, they got ticked off and decided to cut off their grain shipments again. They pulled out of the agreement. Now, what was going on here is Russia's been threatening for a week now to pull out of this agreement and pretty much telegraphed last week, early in the week, that they were going to. Well, you come around on, what was it, Friday or so? I'm forgetting what day now. The Ukrainians do another spectacular attack. This time it looks like it was a sea-based drone attack on multiple Russian ships in Sevastopol in Crimea. Crimea being the Ukrainian region down here that was stolen by the Russians in 2014. Well, Sevastopol is the big port down here, the big Russian port, and the Ukrainians brought some unmanned ship drones, like drones that go in the water, and basically attacked a number of ships, and looks like they caused some significant damage. Well, the Russians got pissed off and shut off the grain deal. They said, we're not going to agree anymore on the grain deal. We're not going to export anymore, let Ukraine export any more grain. And we're blaming Ukraine for it. And the Brits, they claimed that, the Ukrainians used a grain ship, and they used and they launched the unmanned drone from the grain ship, and the Brits helped them do it. And it was all this BS, total lie. The UN even came out, I think it was today I read, the UN came out and said there were absolutely no grain ships going at the time that the attack happened. So there's no way that the Ukrainian attack could have come from a grain ship, because the grain ships weren't there. But as we know, the Russians lie. They lie about all this stuff. This is what Russia does. So in any case, the Russians pulled out a couple days ago. They blamed it on the Ukrainian strike in Sevastopol, but we knew the Russians a week ago told us they were going to pull out of the deal. So they're lying. Okay. So what happens? Ukraine, Turkey, and the UN go ahead and continue several more ships yesterday and today. Several more ships went out from Ukraine bringing grain, and the three countries announced that tomorrow they're going to stop the shipments again, that they're calling sort of a cease of the shipments. Turkey is negotiating again with Russia to get it going, and we'll see what happens. The latest news I saw was, and I couldn't verify this anywhere, but that the United Nations expects that ships loaded with grain, will leave Ukrainian ports on Thursday, starting again. Now, the question is whether the Russians will have agreed to that or not. What is interesting is, in the last 24 hours, the Russians didn't blow up any ships. The Russians have been threatening, we'll attack any civilian ships, even though it's a war crime. They didn't do it. There's one sort of final point I'll make on this story. There's a really good argument. Actually, I got a couple points to make on here. Sorry, a couple points to make. There's a really good argument to be made, and General Stavridis has been doing this. General Stavridis is a former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, an admiral, retired, U.S., very good guy. And he has been proposing for a while now that the United Nations, with NATO or other big countries' help, should be escorting the grain shipments out of Ukraine. That basically we should tell Russia, no, it's a war crime if you attack civilian ships, and these civilian ships are going, and we will be exporting the grain, and they will be flagged with, United Nations, America, Britain, whoever. And if you, Russia, want to attack an American ship carrying, a civilian ship carrying grain and start a war, that's your call. But there's no way Russia would do that. Obviously, our governments have not been willing to do that yet. The last little thing here, what was this? Oh, yes. So Putin is saying, this is great. Putin is saying that he's only going to let the grain shipments continue again, like to let Ukraine ship out the grain. Listen to this. A resumption of the deal can be considered only after a detailed investigation into the circumstances of this incident, the attack the Ukrainians did on the Russian ships in Sevastopol, and also after receiving from Kyiv real guarantees of strict observance of the Istanbul agreements, in particular on the non-use of humanitarian corridor for military purposes. Russia has been claiming that the attack on its military boats in Sevastopol is terrorism by the Ukrainians, okay? An attack on a military boat is terrorism, but Russia attacking Ukrainian civilians, attacking electrical facilities, attacking water distribution plants, that's not terrorism. but it's terrorism when you attack a military. In any case, I am John Aravosis. You are listening to the Aravosis Report. This is my daily update I do Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, where I update you on the latest news from Ukraine. And then at about half past the hour or so, we shift over to Q&A and I take your questions. The best way you guys can help me out, do follow me on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. And please do keep the gifts coming, whether they're super chat questions or whether they're gifts on TikTok. You guys help support my work by doing that, and I really appreciate it. I'm trying to do this full time, and I am getting literally paid by you guys. So thank you for that. Russia, let's move down to Kherson. So Kherson, oh, the cool whale's back. Thank you, James. That's our favorite. That's the one I never ask for because he's an expensive gift, but I always appreciate the whales. Woo! We need to have a sound, or sorry, this is the gift on TikTok that I swear for the rest of you, I'm going to have to get a video of it sometime just to show you how cool it is. It's really cool. We have to get like I don't know if we do like maybe, oh, you know what? We'll do the wave. We'll do the wave for the whale because it's a wave, right? Like a water wave. So every time I get a whale, I will do the wave. I promise. So we'll talk a little bit about Kherson. Kherson is the region down here. Okay. As I told you earlier, so Russia has, annexed, basically claimed as part of Russia, Crimea in the south, the Ukrainian territory that the Russians stole in 2014. And they've also now claimed as Russia 4 provinces down here: Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Okay. Now, Luhansk, the Russians control maybe 98% or something. Okay. Donetsk, the Russians only control 50%. Zaporizhia, they only control 50%, give or take. And Kherson, the Russians did control most of it, but getting worse every day because this is the area right now where the Ukrainians are, well, I'd say tied for the most success. They've been having a lot of success here in the northern part of Kherson, and they've been having a lot of success over here, kind of right here, right west of Luhansk, but also in Luhansk, okay? Right around here. Now, let's talk about Kherson. So I have explained this to you guys before, but I'll explain it again because I know some of you are new, but also, I'm not a teacher, but I've been to school, so I know repeating things can be helpful. Let's give you a quick little lesson on what's going on with the war effort in Kherson, which is one of the 2 big areas where the fighting's been going on, okay? Let me get to that in a second, Drew. I'm actually not, you know what, Drew? I'm not up on it, but why don't you tell me a little more? You don't have to pay for it. Tell me a little more about the Saudi attack. I'm not up on it, or the Saudi report. Thank you for the Aflac duck. Thank you for the duck. Yeah, Aflac. So Kherson. You've got some of the provinces north of the river here. Most of it is south of the river here. I'll move my Vlad banner so you guys can, oops, thank you. That hat always cracks me up. Oops, hang on. I'm trying to move my banner. There we go. Okay, now I can see. So you've got this river cutting through Ukraine, okay? It's the Dnipro River. It cuts through here, goes all the way up, all the way through Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, and then north here, okay, to Belarus. Now, what happens is, with a lot of the fighting going on in Kherson, which is kind of the famous region you'll hear a lot about, the region you'll hear, and also the capital city, which is called Kherson. One of the things to keep in mind when you hear about Ukraine is, and I think it can be confusing for a lot of us, is it's like New York, New York. You hear the word New York and you aren't sure, do they mean the city or do they mean the state, right? Thank you for that, June. I haven't seen that one before. Well, Kherson, the regions all have a capital that's also named after the region. So when they talk about Kherson, pay attention to how the sentence is going as to whether they're talking about the whole region or the capital. Now, or the lead city. Now, the lead city is north of the river, okay? Most of Kherson is south of the river. A small portion of it is north of the river. Now, why that matters is because if you're a Russian soldier, you'd rather be down here with 50,000 Russian troops than up here with 20,000 Russian troops, because the 20,000 Russian troops are kind of cut off from everybody else by the water, right? And that's in fact what happened. The Ukrainians said, you know what? We're coming down from the north anyway, okay? All of this is occupied by Russia, more or less, okay? So you got kind of the eastern going down here. This is all free Ukraine over here. So the Ukrainians are coming down like this to attack Kherson, right? Well, the river is an obvious point that you want to push the Russians up against, because if their back is to a river, it puts them in a bad position, right? I mean, you're fighting. You can only back up so much before you literally fall into the water. So what the Ukrainians did, there were 3 or 4 bridges, strategic bridges right in this area. The Ukrainians have been blowing them up for several months now. They've been targeting them, made them basically impassable to anything other than pedestrian traffic. So in other words, cars, tanks, military vehicles, none of that's making it across. Anything heavy like ammunition isn't coming across. Thank you, Jesse, for the dancer. The Ukrainians have made it so that the Russians are in a bad spot and now are pushing the Russians, actually coming from multiple areas, but pushing the Russians further and further back. And the big prize will be the town of Kherson. Now, this is an important psychological victory when the Ukrainians finally get it, and they could get it by the end of November. Because this was the first and really only, I believe, regional capital that the Russians were able to occupy and take when they invaded back in, the invasion going back to February. Thank you, Ray. So it would be symbolically important. Second of all, it's strategically important because if you look on my map, and it's a little bit hard to see on my map, but if you go a little bit west of here, you go around here, the coast, and you see the town of Odessa. Odessa, very important, large Ukrainian city and super duper important Ukrainian port. Okay. The Russians would like nothing better than to get Odessa and not only take Ukrainians' huge port, but at the same time, they would end up going west, taking this area. And then what happens? As soon as you take this area, the Russians have all of this. You've now turned Ukraine into a landlocked country. It no longer has ports going into the Mediterranean, going through the Black Sea and then into the Mediterranean, right? So this is what the Russians want to do. If the Ukrainians can kick the Russians out of Kherson and kick them south, it leaves the Russians south of the river and in a really bad position later on, whether it's this spring or whatever. If the Russians were to want to take Odessa, it's going to, they want to, but if they were to actually launch an effort, it'll make it way harder when they're south of the river. So this is why you keep hearing about Kherson. It's strategically very important, okay, for both sides. Now let me tell you a little more. So what the Russians have been doing is they have been, first they were trying to convince, but they've also been forcing Ukrainian residents to flee the area north of the river, right? They've been making up all these lies about, oh, the Ukrainians are going to bomb you, they're going to kill you. Mind you, there's only one side in the war that bombs civilians, and it's not the Ukrainians, it's the Russians. Well, now we find out today that the Russians, according to the New York Times, the Russians have actually been forcibly, thank you for that, have been forcibly removing people and evicting them from their homes. One woman, thank you for both of those. Actually, I do love the fall thing, was very pretty. And thank you for the mariachi hat too, Sparky. Thank you, Annie. The one woman, Tatiana, was interviewed by the New York Times, and she said they're trying to force Ukrainians to, quote, go to the safe regions of Russia. Okay, the safe regions of Russia. Now, this is something we had heard earlier. I mean, we know this to be the case, that the Russians keep trying to force Ukrainians from Ukraine into Russia. But we first heard it, thank you, Meg, for those butterflies. We first heard it really, at least one of the big, I would say one of the big efforts we heard early on was the town of Mariupol down here. Mariupol, you may recall, actually, the one thing you will recall, actually, we can talk about my shirt afterwards, just remind me during the Q&A. Mariupol, you will recall, is where the Azovstal steel plant is, where the fighters, remember the Azov fighters were fighting for like 2 months against the Russians, and it was like the Greek 300 against the Persians, right? It was 2,000 Ukrainian troops. Thank you for the. We could almost do a duck. It's not a duck, but the swan. I guess we shouldn't call it a duck. Thank you for the swan. It was 2,000 Ukrainian troops fighting 14,000 Russian troops and holding these guys at bay for almost 2 months. Okay. The Russians were not happy. The Mariupol, people trying to flee Mariupol, it was a town of 450,000 people. It was down to 100,000 people by the end of that siege. The Russians were forcing people who were leaving to go to Russia. And I had posted a story of a guy through Vlad's contacts, my friend Vlad in Ukraine, who a lot of you know, we do the fundraising with, a friend of mine too. A lot of the sorry. I'm like reading the comments, and I know not to read the comments when I'm in the middle of a thought because it always throws my mind out. Kherson. Oh, Mariupol. So what this guy's story was, he was giving a first-person account of how when he was fleeing Mariupol, he was with a bunch of other Ukrainians, and the Russians, first of all, wouldn't let them out at all. Like they stopped them from leaving the region because they just wanted to go to the rest of Ukraine that wasn't occupied by the Russians. The Russians wouldn't let them out, regular citizens, and they would only let them escape to Russia. And this guy and all these people he was with were basically forced into Russia. He said he didn't really care because he had a dual passport, Russian and Ukrainian. So he thought he would be safe because he had a Russian passport. Now, who knows? You know, if anything, they might have tried to draft this poor guy. But he said 90, I think he said like 80, it was 85 to 90% of the Ukrainians he was with who were refugees escaping Mariupol had no idea they were being shipped off to Russia by the Russians against their will. I mean, that's how bad this is. So this is the same thing happening now in Kherson. The Russians have threatened these poor Ukrainians to leave their homes. The woman Tatiana went on. The Russian soldiers take the houses of those who left and loot everything, she said. This is a woman who's there now. She also said the Russians are trying to evacuate the area around the dam. Now, this is interesting because we had heard that the Ukrainians were very concerned that the Russians, actually, I'll do a quick little reset. I am John Aravosis. You're listening to the Aravosis Report. This is my daily update of news from Ukraine in the last 24 hours of the war. And then we switch over to questions and answers shortly after I give you guys the summary. As I always say, the best ways you guys can help me out, I'm independent media, is following me on TikTok, following me on YouTube and everywhere else, and providing gifts if you can on TikTok. That's the funny hats and all that stuff. It actually gives creators a decent amount of money. So please do that and subscribe as well. Subscribers, I give subscribers precedence for answering questions. Thank you, Elle. And I now can do, I didn't mention this, I now can do subscriber only chats with TikTok. And I started doing one already. I've got to set up a date specifically to do it to give you guys a heads up, but I will be doing more of those in the future to thank my subscribers. Let's move on. Let's move on from that. The dam. I was just saying there's concern about the Russians trying to blow up a dam on that same river. And the fact that the Russians are trying to evacuate people around the dam makes you wonder if they're planning that. And that basically, even for the Russians, it would be too much to actually blow up a dam with a lot of civilians there. Thank you, Annie. UK Ministry of Defense is saying that a lot of the reservists that arrived, remember Russia had mobilized all of these 200,000, 300,000 men, that a lot of them arrived poorly equipped. And I had not heard this. In September, Russian officers were concerned that some recently mobilized reservists were arriving in Ukraine without weapons. Okay? They didn't even have weapons. And mind you, it's not like you arrive in Ukraine and then you get a weapon. Literally, they're arriving in Ukraine, going to the front, and these guys didn't have weapons. Thank you for the wishing bottle. It's crazy. Let's talk about Iran, too. So Iran, there's growing concern on this front, too, that we knew as of about a week ago, maybe a little longer, thank you, Bonnie, that the Iranians were selling, we already knew the Iranians were selling these drones, right, to the Russians. The concern was that the Iranians were also going to soon be selling surface to surface missiles. So in other words, surface to air missiles are missiles you shoot in the air and try to knock out planes and things, right? Incoming cruise missiles. Surface to surface missiles are missiles that you shoot up that are meant to hit ground targets. Okay. Thank you, Tom, for that. And the latest CNN is reporting 1,000 additional weapons are coming from Iran to Russia, including 400 kamikaze drones. And I'm assuming, since it said ballistic missiles, 600 ballistic missiles. Now, Russia will likely place these missiles on the northern border with Ukraine. Russia's northern border with Ukraine is here. Well, this is all north, but when they say northern border, they probably mean here. Okay, over here is Belarus. This is Russia. So probably up here is where they're thinking. The range of these missiles makes it so that even on the northern border there, they can pretty much hit the entire country. Thank you, Windsor. Appreciate that. They can hit the entire country. Now, one thing that's kind of pissed me off with this is it's okay for Russia to go to Iran and get long-range missiles to attack Ukraine. But it's not okay for Ukraine to go to America and get long-range rockets to hit Russian troops inside Ukraine. We have refused at this point to provide Ukraine with the longer-range rockets it could use to be much more effective at what it's doing. Now, we are providing them shorter-range rockets that can go up to, say, 60 miles and maybe 100 kilometers, but we refuse to send them the rockets that can go 200 miles or 300 kilometers. And I got to tell you, like I said, I have been very happy with President Biden. I think he's done an amazing job, but on this, he bothers me because he's afraid of Putin. And he keeps being afraid of antagonizing Putin. Thank you, Windsor, of antagonizing Putin. And it's always this issue of, well, it'll be escalation. He'll get mad. What if he does, it'll be World War III. In my view, the best way to get to World War III is to keep telegraphing to Putin that you're afraid of him. Thank you, Bonnie, because it says that Putin can do more and more and more and more, but we're afraid because we don't want to get too involved. Any case, it kind of ticks me off, like I said. And actually, the reason I bring this up is because the Ukrainians have said that they're very worried because these missiles that the Russians are getting from Iran, the Ukrainians have no defense against them. I mean, no real defense against them. So they're really worried. 600 new missiles from Iran going to Russia, and they can wreak a lot of havoc in Ukraine. Now, having said that, Ukraine is to receive 2 NASAMS air defense systems in the very near future. The U.S. Defense Department announced on October 31st, yesterday, that the U.S. would provide Ukraine with 8 NASAMS. These are surface-to-air missiles, so these are for shooting planes out of the sky, for shooting cruise missiles out of the sky, and for shooting drones out of the sky. It's a very advanced system made in Norway. The only problem with it is the range is 18 to 30 miles. So, it's good for defending a city. These are, for example, systems that are used to defend Washington, D.C., to defend the White House. And I'm about 1.5 miles from the White House. So I guess I'm literally defended by a NASAM, but it's not really, you're not going to get coverage across the country with this. Let me look. I don't want to go too long today. Let me see here. I'm going to jump to Q&A. I mean, it's got a little more. Norway's increasing its defense preparedness, but I don't think it's really a ton of news there. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The Russians have been screwing around with the Norwegians. They've had recent arrests there. There have been drones, and the Russians, of course, keep flying nearby. So they're trying to freak out the Norwegians. But in the end, Norway's a member of NATO. There's only so much the Russians can do, So anyway, I am John Aravosis, just to reset again to tell you, thank you, Bonnie, for the flowers. And the guitar, Windsor. But I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. We are here talking about Ukraine, about the war in Ukraine, the news of the last 24 hours. This is the part of the show where we do the question and answer period. So let's talk. What I will do, as always, I will go on TikTok. You can submit questions in the Q&A, but if you are a subscriber, which are the SNN folks, I am able to click a little button on my screen that shows me the subscribers only, and I can actually get questions from you guys first. So I will click that little button for the moment. On YouTube, etc., feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom. I will actually, let me pull up here because there was a question earlier, and I had, from Drew, and I'd asked him to explain a little more. So Drew had written earlier and said, sorry, not about Ukraine. That's okay. Thoughts on the Saudi report about an Iranian attack. And I did not know what he was talking about. So I asked him to explain a little more. And Drew says, Saudi Arabia shared intelligence with the U.S. that Iran was preparing an imminent attack on targets within Saudi Arabia. That's what he saw on Reuters. I mean, Drew, I have no idea. I'm not even sure. I will say this, it's convenient since we've kind of had it up to here with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has been useless in helping us with Ukraine, that it's interesting that not useless. They've been almost useless, but and they've certainly been jacking up oil prices to try to basically interfere in our election. So it's interesting that suddenly Saudi Arabia has decided it's important to let us know that, oh, Iran's coming, and if Iran attacks Saudi Arabia, you could lose your oil, so you better help us, right? So, I would take it with a grain of salt unless I were an American official who could see the intelligence. I just don't trust the Saudis anymore. I mean, I never did trust them, but All right, let's stay on topic. So I'm hearing a lot about the United Nations actually booting Russia from the Security Council. Carol, I've not heard anything about that. The thing is, I don't think that stuff is particularly easy to do. That's the problem. It's not clear whether you would need, first of all, you might need a majority of Security Council members to do it, and good luck with that. Would Russia be able, would even if Russia didn't have a say, is a veto allowed? Would China be able to veto? Would it take a majority or a supermajority of the General Assembly of the United Nations? I don't know. No one's been talking seriously about it. Now, part of the reason is, think about this. Sip of water. If you're one of the permanent members of the Security Council, so what happens is I believe 15 members on the Security Council of the United Nations, and 5 are permanent. U.S., I'm always afraid I'm going to get nervous and get this wrong. U.S., Britain, France, Russia, China, okay? They're the permanent members. They get veto power over anything. So they don't like anything they don't like that's going to the Security Council, they can kill any of those 5 countries. The other 10 shift, I think every month or so, they shift, okay? Well, the problem is, if you're America, you're not sure you want to be in a position where you're empowering people to kick people off the United Nations Security Council, because what if at some point the world gets together and tries to do it to us, right? That would be my guess. So I think, with my long-term political brain, I guarantee you Biden and U.S. officials are saying, we'd love to get Russia kicked off, but we don't need to teach anybody that there's a way to kick us off. So that would be my fear. So I'll bet you it's not going anywhere, but I'd be curious. I'd be half tempted to do it if I had the power. Let me see. All right, guys. So feel free, subscribers, feel free to put questions up if you've got them. Otherwise, let me go and see if you guys put any in the Q&A. What's my background in politics? I've been doing it for 30 years. It's hard to explain. You can go to if you go to my profile, if you guys on TikTok, my profile, erevosis.com, click there. You can go to erevosis.com and see my links, or you can go to my TikTok profile and click the link. And one of the options there is my LinkedIn profile, and you'll see it. But basically, I'm a lawyer. I've got international Masters of International Public Policy. We call it Foreign Service, from Georgetown. I worked in the U.S. Senate. I've worked at the World Bank. I've worked at the United Nations. I speak 5 languages. I've done international consulting for a number of years. It's like sort of never-ending political work that I've done. A lot of activism and civil rights work over the years. So it's a lot. But let me look here and see if the Q&A, TikTok restored my Q&A link in my profile. I was glad to see. I heard that Israel bombed a drone factory in Syria, which stopped shipments to Russia. That's interesting. Is Iran making the drones or just designing them? I have no idea. That's really interesting. I don't know. I just honestly know nothing about it. I had heard that the Israelis had done some bombing in Syria in the last few days. Yes. I had no idea it was drone related, but maybe it was. The shirt. So, okay, this shirt I am not selling right now because I've got a number of pro-Ukrainian themed shirts and hoodies for sale, actually, on my store at store.erevosis.com. Or you can just go to erevosis.com, or on TikTok, go to my profile, click the link, and you'll see my store listed among the links. But this shirt's kind of funny because this shirt I liked a lot, but it's a Ukrainian military patch, okay? That they wear on their uniforms, but it's normally, I've got it over here. It's a really beautiful small one, but I blew it up. But I wasn't happy with the quality because it's kind of gray and a little faded, and I was afraid people would complain. So I stopped selling it because I was a little afraid. And if people complain, the t-shirt shop gets a little annoyed. So I took it down. I mean, I love it, but it is a little gray, and I was just a little afraid that somebody would think it didn't look pretty enough. So, but there's lots of other ones. Thank you, Miles. I'm glad you like it. I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can make a smaller one that at least goes on the, if I make a smaller one that at least goes over the breast, it would be higher quality. Hold on, guys. I'm going to show you actually, because it's such a cool, cool logo. One sec here. One sec. Now that Miles has got me going here. Where is that? I'm looking here. Where did I put the stuff? Where did I? You know what? I may put this away for now. I've got it. Never mind. I've got it buried in a box. I'll have to go find it. It's in my big box of Vishivankas. I'll have to show you guys, but it's very cool. All right. What else we got here? Oh, thank you, Annie. Actually, I will say this for the hoodies. They make it a little complicated. I've got in the store, I'm looking up the next question here. I've got the hoodies that it's listing are the cheaper hoodies. If you go to the hoodie on the store, like click through, look at the hoodie, scroll down, you'll see two hoodies. The more expensive one is the nicer quality one. But I wanted to give people an option because there's like a $5 or $6 difference in price. And that reflects the differential that they charge me. So just so you know, the $35 hoodie is the cheaper one, 40 or 41 or whatever it is the nicer hoodie. But you can scroll down once you click the hoodie to pick the options. All right. So due to Iran giving weapons, is the U.S. under a higher advisory? No. I mean, someone in TikTok saying it's higher and the military is in the air. I don't think so. I mean, oh, excellent, Mustard. Thank you. What I think okay, there's a couple things. All right. The U.S. has a system called the DEFCON system. Now, you might have heard Kanye recently, who went off about Jews and all the anti-Semitism and stuff. Well, what Kanye was referencing in that tweet that got him into a lot of trouble, he was talking about like going DEFCON. Well, the expression isn't death, TH, con, it's DEFCON, defense condition, okay, DEFCON. Kanye said, I'm going to go DEFCON 3. Well, DEFCON 3 means, I mean, it's not peace. Peace is DEFCON 5. War is DEFCON 1. And now some people say war, Kanye, that's good. Oh, that's a good one. Some people say DEFCON 1 is nuclear war. Some people say DEFCON 1 is war. But war meaning America is at war with Russia, right? The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor. That takes us to DEFCON 1. Each level, DEFCON 4, right? DEFCON 5 is fine. DEFCON 4 gets a little more, right? It gets a little more. I hope nobody. I just saw somebody get knocked out on TikTok that was talking about the t-shirts. I hope it wasn't somebody being good talking about the t-shirt. Moderator, just be careful with that. Was that a troll? Like, I was just reading somebody talking about the t-shirts. Like I said, I hope that wasn't a bad thing there, that we got somebody by accident. Okay, that's fine, Ashley. So thank you, Annie, for that. In any case, so each level has another level of preparedness. So like at one level, the planes go in the air. Like our planes that carry the nuclear bombers go in the air. You know, at a certain level, we would put all of our ships into the sea. So they would be ready to get involved, but also less likely to get bombed Pearl Harbor style, right? Where they're all together. That's what the DEFCON levels are. I would be surprised if we would, if we lowered lower, depends which way you want to put it. Remember, 5 is peace. So I'd be surprised if we went down to 4. Having said that, we don't announce when the DEFCON level goes down or goes up or when it changes in America. The government doesn't tell us that. They don't say, oh, it's changed. Because of the war in Ukraine, I would think we're being a little more careful. I mean, we know for a fact Biden has moved more U.S. troops to Europe, right? I mean, he's shifted out new troops to have so the troops are refreshed, so to speak, but he's also moved more troops there. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's things he's doing to sort of prepare us just in case there's war. But I doubt it's anything, because the other problem is, even though Putin's willing to be kind of a wreck about this stuff and reckless, Biden is trying to be careful so as not to signal to Russia that we're getting ready for war against him, against Russia. So Biden is trying to sort of keep it cool so the Russians look and go, okay, the Americans haven't really raised their alert status any, right? So that's my thought on that. Let me look here. Oh, that's interesting. Sean says there's an independent site called the DEFCON Warning System. DEFCON, like I said, is defense condition, that tries to give a civilian-type, peer-reviewed forecast of the level, considering that the actual level is confidential. Interesting. Well, yeah, if you publicize the DEFCON level, well, you could have mass panic, but maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Now, what is the level claiming right now? I'm just curious. Just curious. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. The U.S. time. Oh, God. Yeah. Check by the way, we're changing the time changes, I think, next weekend here in the U.S. So make sure I'm going to keep doing my broadcast at the normal time, which is 6 p.m. New York City. I mean, I'm in D.C., but people tend to know New York more in terms of the time. So I'll keep doing 6 p.m. New York City time, Monday to Friday, but be aware that come next week, the time difference is going to be different between me and all of you who are not in America. You Americans, it's the same. Let me just see what else you guys were saying here. Sorry, just looking for more. We've got more TikTok questions. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, here we go. PB&J. Will we see the results of the Ukrainians that have been trained by the West? Some have now completed their training. We know, actually, I was going to mention this. Maybe I went too quickly and didn't. We know that there are Ukrainians being There are Ukrainians being trained by the Brits. Excuse me, they're being trained in Britain, but by a number of NATO countries. A number of countries are there training them, but we know it's in the UK. The other one, and I thought I was going to mention it today, and I missed it, or I just didn't put it in here. I want to say there was more about training, but maybe not. Oh, yeah, several dozen Ukrainian air defense troops are completing training in Norway on how to operate and maintain the air defense systems that we're providing. It's under 100 troops. I just remembered there was that additional detail on training. But the results, who knows what the results is? I mean, the results is the Ukrainians are going to be a little bit better at what they're doing. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's any way of quantifying it really, Oops, let me go back to the I know the time changing stuff is ridiculous. All right, let me look at another. Actually, let me pull this up again. Any subscribers got questions on TikTok? People are being kind of the questions are mellow today. Usually you guys are like more questionful. Nope, not seeing it. All right. Just to remind folks, I will pull up another question on TikTok. I am John Aravosis. You are listening to the Aravosis Report. This is my daily update, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. That's 6 p.m. New York City time, where I go through the latest news from Ukraine, from the war in Ukraine of the last 24 hours, and then we do question and answer. So candy coma, exactly, from Halloween. Let me see here. Did you hear about Russia saying that Finland will freeze to death since they cut ties with Russia? Well, they didn't cut ties with Russia, right? I mean, Finland didn't cut ties with Russia, but I saw something about, what's funny? I didn't quite see the quote. All I saw was, which was kind of funny, was that people were saying, well, I got news for you. If you think the Finns are either afraid or going to freeze, and this is actually true, there's 300,000 Russians under the ice on the Finnish border. And I mean, when I first heard this, I Googled it because I couldn't believe it. From World War II, when the Russians took advantage of World War II to basically invade everybody else and all over Europe, and they attacked Finland, it took the Russians like 3 years to basically kind of have any kind of success. And the Finns, I mean, killed 300,000 Russians, and they're still buried under the ice there. I mean, amazing, absolutely amazing. Thank you, Tom, for that. But yeah, so I did not see that, but I mean, give me a break. Russia, the thing with Russia is Russia's very good at doing this chutzpah thing. They're very proud of themselves, but they're very proud of nothing, not nothing, but nothing in the sense of, it's like this. They've been getting the bejesus beaten out of them by the Ukrainians, and they're still walking around like, oh, I mean, literally the Russian trolls will still come on TikTok and say to me, you just wait until we really let loose. And I'm like, dude, you're 8 months into the war and you're telling me you haven't let loose yet? Are you insane? Are you completely insane? Like, your Putin should be thrown out of office if 8 months into the war he hasn't let loose yet. You just wait and see. Give me a break. You're right. They rely on their nuclear threat, but the problem is, and I've talked about this before, the problem with nuclear. Oh, thank you, Sam. I am for the duck, Aflac. The problem with the nuclear threat is nuclear weapons are very good for threatening. They're not very good for using. And what I mean is, America's in the same boat. I mean, we kind of can't use our nuclear weapons unless we are attacked with nukes. Thank you. What was that? Missy? I don't know how to pronounce that for the hat there. I don't know how to put this. Russia, okay? Basically, none of us can use nukes first. Any of us who use nuke first will be destroyed, okay? If America uses it first, the entire world will turn against us, and then they'll be boycotting us, okay? If the Russians use it first, I mean, just in general, the same thing's going to happen to Russia. If Russia uses it in Ukraine, we're entering the war. And Russia can't afford that because Russia's not even really doing very well against Ukraine. Imagine what happens if NATO enters the war. So Russia doesn't want us entering the war. So they're not going to use it. Nukes are very good, however, at scaring the hell out of everybody. So what nukes have been having nuclear, I was going to say nuclear power. Thank you for the origami. Chris, having nuclear weapons has made Biden more worried about Russia. It's made Biden not want to give Ukraine, remember those fighter jets at the very beginning that Poland was going to give and the whole deal blew up? It's made Biden afraid of giving Ukraine long-range rockets that can go 200 miles or longer, right? So nuclear weapons have been a really good deterrent, but they're not anything Russia can really use. Yeah, shall we play a game? Exactly. So that's why I think Russia's bluffing on the whole nuclear thing, but it's a very good bluff. Yeah, actually, this is good. Jay is saying nuclear weapons basically prevent a foreign army, from invading your country. Short of that, they're kind of useless. That's exactly it. Royce is saying, although I'm going to guess that's Roshin. I don't even know if that's Roshin or another Royce. How long do you think it will take for Ukraine to join NATO? I think a long time. I don't think the U.S. wants. NATO doesn't want Ukraine. Unfortunately, I think it sucks. But Ukraine has been trying to join NATO since like 2008 or so, and NATO didn't want them, So it's like, I think the irony is, however this war ends, assuming Ukraine comes out of it in one piece, and I think it will, the safest thing for the world would be for Ukraine to join NATO because then Russia couldn't touch it. But leaving Ukraine out of NATO means we're going to have another war. Giving Putin a way out, letting Putin save face means we're going to have another war. There is no security guarantee we can give Ukraine that means anything unless they're part of NATO, because anything else we promise is going to be, well, you're our friend, we'll try to help, right? But that's not a promise. Within 5 years, within 5 to 10 years, Russia will be doing this again. So, can Russia rearm their large ballistic missiles with conventional explosive payloads? I mean, I'm sure. I really don't know the answer, but I don't know why not. I do know, for example, that the tactical nuclear weapons, which are the small ones that we're worried about them using, they are they can be put on delivery systems that can handle nuclear bombs, but can handle conventional bombs. So that basically they're not like suitcase nukes kind of thing. They're literally things that are artillery shells, things like that. And it's the same kind of delivery that a conventional bomb could be used on. So I would think the same kind of thing. But honestly, using a ballistic missile to deliver a conventional bomb, I mean, part of the problem you've got, think about this. Imagine an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, which are the big, the big nuclear rockets that we have and Russia has, the big scary ones. You're going to use that to send just a regular old bomb? Well, what do you think is going to happen if Russia shoots one of these in the air? I mean, the whole world is going to think Russia just launched their nukes. And America is going to have to react as though Russia did just launch its nukes, as will the French and the British, who are the other nuclear powers. I mean, there's other nuclear powers, right? So I don't think it's the kind of thing you'd want to do. I don't think so. Do you think Iran will officially join the war now they're getting sanctions from everybody? I think, Iran is in an interesting position because, if anything, again, I think they're very lucky Joe Biden's in the White House, because I think Biden is somewhat reticent about ratcheting things up. Biden also, because of the pro-democracy movement at home, Iran would probably like nothing better than to have America attack Iran right now. But honestly, I wish there were a way. I don't know enough about this, meaning about what our military capability is vis-a-vis Iran right now, vis-a-vis how Iran is shipping the weapons. But I kind of wish we would go after these weapons, because this is ridiculous. Daniel is saying, did you see that Ukraine recently claimed 950 dead Russian soldiers in one day? I did. They were claiming it maybe Sunday, but I did. Apparently, the winter alone could kill 50,000 Russian occupiers a month. That would be insane. What's the breaking point for Russia? I mean, that would be an insane number. 50,000 Russians a month. The thing is, with Russia, it's going to be how pissed off. Oh, that's funny. This is funny. Bash Brannigan just put up the same question Daniel did. I don't know what battle. I read about it yesterday, which made me think it was Sunday, because what I read said like the day before. So it was Saturday or Sunday, supposedly this happened. I don't know anything more about it. What will make a difference is, we'll go another couple minutes. What is making Russian moms pissed off, that the moms movement starts losing too many sons, because that's what made a big difference in Afghanistan in the 1980s. And mind you, in the 1980s, losing 14,500 Russian soldiers was considered unconscionable over a 10-year period. Okay. In Ukraine, easily the Russians have lost 25 to 30,000 men in just 8 months, versus 15,000 men in Afghanistan in 10 years. So these kind of numbers mean a lot of people back home are going to start hearing about the war and be worried about the war. Okay. That's the first thing. Second of all, the question then comes, to what degree do the security services kind of join together with the Ministry of Defense and say, we've had enough? That these kind of deaths, that the military isn't advancing, but at the same time, these kind of deaths tell the powers that could overthrow Putin that, somebody's got to put a stop to this. Like, this guy's losing the war. He's now losing our men. We've lost 750,000 men who have fled the country. And these are guys of prime working age. These are young guys, like guys in their 20s, pretty much, who fled the country. That's not who you want to lose, right? Demographically, it's a big problem, because these guys would have been cranking out babies, right? But also economically, it's a problem, because they're, entering their prime years to work. But you would need the people who could threaten Putin, Ministry of Defense, and especially the security services, to kind of say, this is no longer acceptable. AC Autor is saying, I've heard that NATO made an agreement with Russia to never let Ukraine in NATO. Is that true? I doubt it. The only thing is, I'm not convinced we would do it yet because there's no reason for NATO to agree to that right now. You know, I mean, had NATO made the agreement before, well, first of all, Russia was claiming there was no such agreement going into this war. Russia was claiming this was a reason for the war. NATO wasn't a reason for the war. Ukraine tried to get in 14 years ago, and NATO didn't accept them in. So give me a break, right? But no, I seriously doubt that. That's the kind of thing that maybe would be part of a peace plan, maybe, but it would rather than NATO saying it, it would be Ukraine saying, we promise for the next 20 years we will not join NATO or something like that, right? But it would be something that Ukraine would say. Hey, Pete in London, it's something Ukraine would say. It wouldn't be appropriate for NATO to say that. But in any case, we wouldn't do it preemptively because that would be giving Russia something for nothing, right? Bakhmut. So I will reset quickly, but then I think I'm going to go in a second. I am John. You know what? I'm going to do the recap. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my daily update about the Ukraine war, the war in Ukraine by Russia. And we just finished doing the Q&A. What I'm going to do right now is giving you the recap where I go over what the top stories were we covered today in case you're coming late. And this way, at least you get kind of a synopsis of the news. And then I am going to say sayonara, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. And I may go over to Discord. Yeah, I'll go over to Discord for a little bit. Our Discord is discord.aravosis.com. So the news. Oh, yeah. So as I said, we've got a fundraiser going on. Please help if you can. We are raising money to buy 2 diesel generators and 2 backup batteries for Ukrainian troops on the front lines to provide them power when the Russians knock out the power, because the Russians are knocking out the power. We're approached by some Ukrainians that are heading to the front shortly, and we know who they are. We know people who know them, so they're legit. And they said they could use these 2 generators, 2 batteries. So we're raising $3,800 for them. We've already raised $2,900 in just one day from all of you guys. So thank you for that. And hopefully, I'm hoping by tomorrow we have the money. And as soon as we reach the amount, then we'll call it quits on that. 100% of the money is going to the Ukrainians. I'm not touching it. I'm not getting a dime. And we will pick the top donor, the person who gives the most. And if you gave a couple times, we'll tally it up. Person who gave the most, and one random person, and each one of them will get a Ukrainian Vyshyvanka from Ukraine, the traditional shirts that Vlad bought, some really nice ones, and sent them to me. So I've got them here in Washington, D.C., and I'll ship them out. Even if you're abroad, we'll ship them abroad. So please do help if you can. I will put up the banner again really quick on you guys. Vlad's contact is there for PayPal, and for the rest of you, you can go to my profile where you see the Linktree link. Go to my profile, click the Linktree link, and you'll see a bunch of things, including the top thing is how to give via PayPal to give to Vlad. Pretty much, you log into your PayPal and use the address that's there. And otherwise, my Discord's there, my Patreon's there, the store is there for buying Ukrainian themed clothes. But anyway, please help if you can. I think this. Oh, and I don't want to get everybody too, because it's poor form to talk about 2 fundraisers at once. But next week we are going to be raising money for an animal charity in Ukraine, which I am very excited about. A charity that goes and finds animals that are basically now homeless because their owners have left or been forced to leave, and the animals are still there. And they take care of them, take them to the vets, house them, and then finds them new owners. So very nice. I had a long talk with the guy, and I'm very excited about doing it with Anton Kirichenko. Very, very excited about this. But in any case, that's next week's fundraiser. But this one, we're providing electricity to the troops at the front, for field hospital, for kitchen, for powering their drones and powering their communications. Okie dokie. So per the Kyiv Post, Ukrainian commandos blew up 3 helicopter gunships at a Russian military airfield close to the Latvian border. It was 310 miles north of Ukraine, 500 kilometers north of Ukraine. Grain, Russia pulled out of the grain deal a few days ago. Ships continued to be sent out, but Ukraine, the United Nations, and Turkey agreed to put a hold on the exports for at least a couple days But the UN may have just said, at least according to one source that I read, that they are looking to continue the exports again on Thursday. Russia is telling Ukrainians in the northern Kherson region to get out and flee. Well, not just get out and flee. They're ordering them to leave, to evacuate and go south and to head to Russia, which is not good. The Russians have also, I didn't mention this earlier, also evacuated the administration from Kherson in the north as well. The occupation administration, the people who were basically the collaborators who were administering, Kherson for the Russians, because this is occupied territory, it's Ukrainian territory. They've moved all of those officials south, which means the Russians think they're in trouble. So that was a good sign. The British Ministry of Defense is saying that Russian reservists were so poorly equipped that when they first arrived in Ukraine, many of them didn't even have weapons. Iran is preparing to send another 1,000 additional weapons to Russia, including ballistic missiles and about 400 kamikaze drones. The Pentagon says Ukraine will receive 2 NASAMS air defense systems in the very near future, with 6 more to come. Zaporizhia, I didn't mention this story earlier, but in Zaporizhia is the nuclear plant that the Russians are occupying, where there's been a lot of concern about the Russians blowing it up and all of this. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Russia set up equipment on the rooftop of the 5th power unit to combat aerial reconnaissance. So in other words, the Russians are putting up more and more military equipment on the nuclear reactor, which is insane. Zelensky says up to 40% of Ukraine's energy system has now been destroyed by Russian attacks. The Washington Post says Norway's prime minister said his country's military will increase its preparedness starting Tuesday. And finally, government officials in Moldova, which neighbors Ukraine to its west, reported that a Russian missile was intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses while flying through Moldovan airspace. The only good news to report, so to speak, is this is not new. The Russians shot 3 cruise missiles through Moldovan airspace earlier this month as well. So, or earlier last month, I should say, in October. So, all right, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you for all the gifts on TikTok and elsewhere. I will see you guys tomorrow. Join me, actually, or if you're around now, come to my Discord. We've got over 900 people on the Discord. It's discord.aravosis.com. Otherwise, feel free to Google aravosis.com overall, mylastname.com, and you'll find my Discord. You'll find my Patreon if you want to support me and help out. You'll find my store for my Ukrainian goods, aravosis.com. Okay, guys? All right, let's head over to the Discord for a little bit, and have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow. Boom.